past several weeks is that trying to make a live presentation with information that is, admittedly somewhat complex, it becomes, I'm sure, for you very hard to understand what I'm trying to convey to you. And I can see where, it can be confusing, difficult to follow. And given that the information is so important, I think that it would be much better if we do the program in this type of a format where it's just one-on-one, you and me, and we slow it all down to try to make it absolutely clear what I'm trying to get across to you. And the reason is there is so much that's going on today in the world of science that is lining up exactly with what the Bible has to say. Now, right away, that might put you in a little bit of a defensive and saying, well, this guy's seeing spaceships or something like that, and I'm not talking about that. I'm saying the point that I'm trying to make to everyone is that the astronomical discoveries that are being made by NASA and the astronomers all over the world, the things that are going on in the sky, line up, curiously, with the documents that were written thousands of years ago, especially the Bible. I mean, it's okay to say, well, I believe in the second coming of Jesus Christ and we're all waiting for Jesus to come back. But then when it actually happens, not even to pay a bit of attention to it, I think, what's the sense of all of this? What's the sense of going to church every week if when what church is really talking about starts to happen and you can see it with your own eyes and you don't pay a bit of attention to it? And so that's where I'm coming from. What I'm trying to tell you is that in looking at the book of Revelation and in looking at other parts of the Bible and other documents written thousands of years ago, there's something very strange, because what was written so many thousands of years ago seems to be happening today, and all of the documentation and all of the confirmation is not, it's not coming from religious people. It's coming from scientists. And that's wonderful. I mean, they don't have any axe to grind one way or the other. They're not Christians or Muslims, they're just people. And they're trying to do something, and they're seeing things which are awesome. I mean, if you've been watching CNN or if you're watching your local news on ABC or whatever, you're seeing programs all the time about new discoveries that are being made. And you're watching scientists who are saying, we don't know what these things are. We've never seen things like this before. I guess one of the catalysts for my search and the reason I began looking at this so closely was what led up to the discovery of what's called supernova 1987A. Now, first of all, when we talk about these wonders in the sky that astronomers are seeing, let's keep in mind that we're looking at things that happened hundreds, even millions of years ago. The fact that we're able to see it means that the light from these events have just reached the Earth. See? So when we call supernova 1987A, it was seen in 1987, which means that the light from this tremendous event in the sky reached the Earth in 1987. Could have been hundreds of thousands of years ago, could have been millions of years ago. But it's so strange, because all of the, whether it be Hindu, Buddhist, ancient writings, much of what is practiced by New Age people today, is centered around the pineal gland of the brain, which is the third eye, the single eye. I mean, I know there's a big thing going on about buying melatonin, to help you sleep. and melatonin is secreted by the pineal gland of the brain. Well, the only reference to that in the Bible is made by Jesus in Matthew chapter 6, verse 22. And at that point, Jesus talks about the single eye. And he says, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. Well, that's in reference to the pineal gland of the brain. Now, in the Old Testament, there's a very strange statement made by Jacob in Genesis chapter 32 and verse 30. And there, Jacob says, I have seen God face to face, and I will call the place Peniel. So there's a reference by Jacob in Genesis 32:30 about Peniel and talking about seeing God face to face. And there's a reference in Matthew 6:22 in the New Testament by Jesus talking about the single eye and filling your body with light. Well, of course, the Bible tells us that God is light, and if Jacob saw God face to face, he saw light face to face, and the way that would be done would be through the organ in your brain, which is the light receptor, which is the pineal gland. So, okay, so we have this reference to a pineal gland in the brain, and we have the reference by Jesus to the single eye. Well, then there's another reference, too, that's interesting. The other reference is in the very first book of Genesis. It's Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. And it says, let there be lights in the heavens. So that would be stars and planets and galaxies, etc. Let there be lights in the heavens, and let them be for signs. So if I want to look for signs of God or heaven or spirit or whatever, then the very Bible that we carry around on the very first page gives very specific instructions. Let there be lights in the heavens, and let them be for signs. So that's where I'm coming from. Now, we talk about if your eye be single, your body will fill with light, and that's what Jesus says. And Jacob says, I've seen God face to face, I'll call the place Peniel. So then our focus comes to that part of the brain which René Descartes many years ago said is the seat of the soul, the third eye, the pineal gland located between these two eyes in the center of your brain. So you have your two eyes, and then you have your third eye in the center. Let me tell you what is so fascinating. Because supernova 1987A was shown by Hubble, and it was on the front page of National Geographic in April 1997. And I want to show you a picture of it to show you why I find this so fascinating and why we have worked so diligently to connect this particular phenomena to the Bible. The Bible saying, look, let the lights in the heavens be for signs. And then Jesus talking about the single eye, and Jacob talking about Peniel. So we have the New Testament, the Old Testament, the instructions of the Bible. And then something happens in the sky. Well, you know, I've been going to church all of my life, and they're telling me, you know, that these things are going to happen. There's going to be signs in the stars. But when it occurs, and when you actually start looking at this, then people say, oh, you're a cult or something. You know, all this stuff. And it's discouraging to a point. But then I realized that, you know, I have to go on by myself and not be involved with any groups or any organizations or any religions. That's why at the Hidden Meanings Conference Center, we have no members. I want everybody to be absolutely free and no references to cults or nonsense. Everything, as we work on this in the coming weeks, everything I share with you, I will document scientifically. I will not use one bit of New Age stuff. I will not use fundamentalist things other than the Bible itself. So we will stay totally focused on the scientific events and the scientific proof as given to us in the newspapers, on television, by the scientists, by the people at Smithsonian, by the people at NASA, and I'll present this to you. And I'm not asking you to believe anything. I'm simply saying to you, take a look at it. Isn't it curious? And the first thing I wanted to show you, what we talk about, isn't it curious, is the single eye, which Hubble took a picture of, which was released in April '97. And you look for yourself. There are two large circles, like eyes that we have in our head. And the center is a third eye, or a single eye, and it looks exactly like an eye, and it's in bright green. And as you look at it, think of Jesus' words, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. Let me see if I can get this for you so you can see it. Okay, I just want to, tilt it. So, can you see it there? Now that's supernova 1987A. And you can see the two large rings on the outer. And you can see that the third eye in the center. And amazingly, USA Today has told us, and all the scientists have reported, that that third eye, that single eye in the center, is now on fire. And its light will reach the Earth around the year 2002. That comes from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. But now that is in the sky. And certainly it's a fulfillment of Jesus' words, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. Could that be the eye of God looking down on you and your family now? Well, isn't it worth talking about? Isn't it worth thinking about? And that's what my job is, and that's what I'm doing. And at the Hidden Meanings Conference Center, that's what we're talking about, providing scientific documentation to everyone who will simply listen. It's so difficult, because we have so many different religious groups, and religious groups are, they're very concerned about losing the attention of their members. But what that does to people is it restrains people from even looking at the very things that these religious groups have been talking about. It is my personal opinion, and that's all I'm sharing with you. But I'm giving you documentation, and I will give you documentary proof as we go along. It is my personal opinion that what you just saw, that single eye in the sky of Hubble, is the second coming of Jesus Christ. Everything lines up exactly with the Scriptures, and as I said, I will share that with you. See? Now, I have no reason or no desire to step on your beliefs. I mean, that's why I'm not coming here with documentation from New Age or any other groups. I'm simply coming with scientific facts. You can share this with children. I mean, everybody should be aware of what's going on in the sky. I mean, the people come on, and incidentally, if you'd like to call, you can, but the people come on television from ABC or CNN or whatever, and they share with you these discoveries and tell you about new planets have been found. Well, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to share with you about new planets which have been found, but what I'm going to show you and prove to you is that the new planets that have been found line up exactly with the Bible story. Line up exactly as the Bible has lined up for us, the birth of Jesus through a virgin, and then Jesus winding up as the Lion of Judah. The discoveries of new planets, which were made beginning in December 1995, were made exactly in that order, from Virgo to Leo. I mean, all of these things can't be simply coincidences. And so I'm looking at this tremendous thing that's occurring in the sky today, with the discovery of planets and with the single eye that I showed you a moment ago. All of these things together, and we'll go step by step, and we'll take it very slow so that you can understand. But the important thing to realize is that the Bible and Jesus have talked about the coming light, the light coming upon the earth. And now the scientists say that this light in the form of electromagnetism, obviously, from supernova, will touch down on the earth approximately 2002. That's only about 3.5 years from now. And will it affect you? Will it cause a change in your life? Will it make something happen? And the very simple scientific fact is that it will, and you see the changes already, and we'll get into that as we go along. But I will provide you with documentation for everything that I say. I will not tell you anything unless I prove it scientifically. When people come into the Hidden Meanings Conference Center, everyone receives documented information from encyclopedias, from NASA, from Hubble, from the scientists, from CNN, from wherever it may be. Nothing is New Age. Nothing is fundamentalist. Everything is scientifically proven to you. I mean, you can't always prove things as far as God or spirit, but you can at least prove where is the source of your information. And the source of my information will not be from prophets or people who are channeling or people who are meditating, but it comes from the scientists who are making these discoveries. And we take those discoveries, we connect them with what it says in the Bible. We then connect them with what goes on inside of your body. And then we connect it with what's going on in the sky. And more than that, I don't know what else we can do. But I don't think that makes you a cult simply because we say, hey, folks in church, everything that you have been praying about is now happening. And as the Bible says, look up, for your redemption draweth nigh. I mean, look up into the sky. That's where it's going on, see. Someone had said to me recently, well, do you believe in God? And my answer to that question was, no one has ever told me about God. Now you could say, oh, well, I'll tell you about God. No, you won't. You'll tell me what your church believes about God. And you heard it from your church or your pastor. And your pastor heard it from his teacher. And they read it in this book. And yet somebody else will say, no, our book is right, or our philosophy is correct. And so I've heard from all different types of religious philosophies, and I don't agree with them. And the reason I don't agree with them is because I don't believe they're logical. And God is extremely logical. Everything that I have ever experienced in my life, and you have to be, if you're going to be honest, you'll have to say the same thing. Everything you have ever experienced in your life has a logical explanation. Everything. There's a logical explanation because God works in accordance with his law or her law. The entire universe flows in a harmony of law. And God doesn't move out of that. And religion tries to tell us about the supernatural. There is nothing supernatural. There is no such thing as anything supernatural. If anything occurs and we think, oh, that's a miracle. No, it's just something that never happened before. It's just something that proves what can happen when we understand the law, when we understand the physics, we understand the quantum part of it, okay? So I am still waiting for someone who can tell me about God, but not from the standpoint of what their church told them. It has to be face-to-face. It has to be a personal encounter with God. And it has to be able to be proved. If I hear people say, well, did you read the book, or did you see this, or did you hear that? I'd say, well, show me proof. Prove it to me. A lot of people in New Age are talking about, oh, the earth this is going to happen and that's going to happen and these terrible things are going to happen. But I want to see it from a geologist. I want to see it from a scientist. I don't want to hear about it from somebody who's channeling some strange thing, or, you know. I want to see proof. And I find I have just as much difficulty with New Age people who are into that as I do with fundamentalists who believe that they heard something, or they heard something in tongues, or God told them something, or something like that. Forget that stuff. Let us be logical. And if we're logical, and if we look through science, and we look for proof of everything we say, we'll run smack into God face to face, because that's where God is. So I walked out one night into a field and looked up at all the millions of stars in the dark sky and said, listen, God, or whatever you are, or wherever, I am not a Christian, I am not a Jew, I am not a Muslim, I am not a Buddhist, I am not a Hindu, I am not New Age, I am not fundamentalist, I'm just a person, just a human being that wants to find out and wants to help you bring down to this earth that love and healing and harmony that we have never allowed because of our groups. And once I was separated from all religious groups, then I found, now I'm free. Now I can hear all things, I can listen to all things, and I can study all things without somebody saying, oh, you shouldn't get involved in that, oh, you shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't do the other thing. Well, the track record we have from religion and political institutions on this earth says we should do something different quick. And so, since we've been hesitant about doing something, now as we see supernova in the sky, we see God is about to intervene and do it for us. And that's great. It's really good news. I have a real bad problem with the religious fundamentalists and New Age fundamentalists who predict all of this gloom and doom coming on the earth and wars and atomic wars and all this business. No. God, the word God, is a root of the word good. Comes from the word good. And so what is God doing is going to be good for the earth, and wonderful things of healing are going to happen on the earth. It's not going to be a happy time for people who oppress women or children, or people who torture animals or nature for profit and things like that. Those things are going to change in the next few years by the movements that are coming down from the sky. But it's going to be a wonderful time for all who believe in a harmony and being able to be one with everybody. You know, when I stepped out and said, I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Jew, I'm not a Muslim, or not a Buddhist, I'm not anything like that, then I was free to reach my hand out to every other human being without some group or religion saying, oh, you know, you got to do it our way. So I guess the first thing then we would look for is to try to establish some degree of harmony, a harmony that holds everything together. Is there a connection between you, the scriptures, and what goes on in the universe? And if we look, it's a very interesting thing. If you were watching a few weeks ago, ABC had a great show about the cosmos and the universe. And one of the amazing things was they confirmed what Dr. Gary Toller of the Goddard Space Labs has said, and he's also part of the European Space Agency. But what they concluded, and what all science has found, is that this magnificent universe that we see, and I mean it's awesome, you know, it's just endless, and it is so big beyond our wildest dreams. But what science has now proven and told us is that we can only see 10% of it. Can you imagine that? 90% of the universe is hidden. 90% of the universe is invisible. So we think we've seen so much, and yet we've only seen 10% of it. Well, keeping that in mind, let's do a little exercise to see if indeed there is a harmony. How many seconds in a minute? 60. How many seconds in an hour? There's 3,600. And how many seconds in a day? In a day, there's 86,400 seconds. Now, there's a Hindu measure, which is an interesting thing. And it pretty much is easy to prove. It's based on what they called prana, P-R-A-N-A. Prana is breath. And it's a measurement of breath. If you inhale and then exhale, normal breath, you find that it takes approximately 4 seconds. And that's the prana measure. 4 seconds for a breath. Now, of course, this is a measure. This isn't an exact. I mean, things vary every day. You talk, you may hold your breath and all this kind of stuff. But based on a normal breath is approximately 4 seconds. Well, if there are 86,400 seconds in a day, and if you breathe and it takes 4 seconds, it would mean that you breathe 21,600 times a day, which is simply a measure. You don't actually. Well, when we apply the fact that we can only see 10% of the universe, then we start to see a very strange harmony. Okay? Now, if there are 86,400 seconds in a day, isn't it interesting that the diameter of the sun is 864,000 miles? The number of seconds in the day is 10% of the diameter of the sun. Now, you don't have to get into any new age or science. Open a dictionary and look up the word sun, and you'll see that that's true. Now, if there are 86,400 seconds in a day, and the average breath is 4 seconds, that means there's 21,600 times that we have the average breath. Well, the diameter of the moon is 2,160 miles. Wow. The diameter of the sun is 864,000 miles. The number of seconds in a day is 86,400, or 10% of that. The diameter of the moon is 2,160, or 10% of the number of breaths that you take, 21,600. The distance between the Earth and the Moon is 216,000 miles, 10%. The constant speed of light is 186,400 miles per second. And the number of years that the sun stays in any zodiacal sign, 2,160, which again is 10% of the average number of breaths that you take in a day. So, I mean, there's a connection right down to your breath. There is a harmony between your body and the universe. One is the same as the other. And isn't it interesting that the scientists are telling us that we can only see 10% of the universe, and they also tell us that intellectually we use 10% of our brain. So then we have ourselves as a microcosm, or a brain with a body, and now we're looking up into the universe and saying, wow, do we have a cosmic brain there? Okay. So these are the things we'll be talking about as we go along, and I hope that you'll find it interesting, and I hope that you'll be willing to sit, and we'll never talk about anything other than what we can prove and document for you. But there is some tremendously amazing things going on that you should be aware of. So I'm going to look forward to seeing you next week right here on Hidden Meanings.